Everyone, I'm Janet, and I do have a couple of slides because I thought, what am I going to talk about? I still feel like I'm right smack bang in the middle of the journey. So I wondered what insights I can share that are of value to other people who are thinking about doing this. So I can see the slides. I'm going to stand over here. So you might sort of see with some of those buzzwords around here that... stuffed it up. That I work in allergy on grass pollens. So I'm trying to develop better tests and treatments for patients who live in subtropical regions because there are some gaps in capabilities there. So I thought to myself, you know, that I got asked to speak about the transition from being an academic into industry or working with industry, as my case is. And I thought, well, what does it mean to be a scientist? And it means obviously that I'm doing research and teaching and working with students in the lab. I do a lot of work in collaboration with industry in research and development. I'm also, you might have seen, I'm part-time as well, 60% with QUT and 40% with Metro North Hospital and Healthcare Service. So I'm developing policy strategy for the research within the health sector in Metro North. I do a lot of science communication. I think we all do that. We all are communicating our research to others. And we all, in some ways, have to market what we do to others, especially for our funding bodies. And we're always learning from the experts. So I thought, well, what have I done in my career? And from the very early stage, I've always done milestone-driven contract research that has had a commercial output focus from the very beginning. So part of that was in my work as my first postdoc in Ag Research New Zealand, and then at Monash Immunology in Autogen company, and that went really well. I was working at the immunology, also the biochemistry department, and the company wanted to do another deal in the allergy space, and this was back in 1999. So they thought, that's great, we'll just get Janet to move from here and we'll headhunt her and put her over in allergy. And that was when I started working on grass pollens back in 1999. I then started working as part of the CRC for asthma and airways disease. And I got a grant from the Victorian Asthma Foundation to discover all of the allergen components of some of the subtropical species, because the clinicians noticed that people were still having allergies after the temperate species had finished flowering. So we all thought, well, what is it? What could it be? And I went away to find out what that was. Then I moved up to Queensland and I got an NHMRC development grant to take that molecule that I discovered and see whether we could design a more specific and sensitive test for diagnosing people who are primarily allergic to those kinds of grasses. So I did that in collaboration with Sullivan Nicolaides Pathology and Thermo Fisher in Sweden. And that was a very, really good collaboration and a really productive, positive project. But they've not opted to license it, so I'm still looking for opportunities to take that from the lab into the clinic. Around about that time, I was contacted by a delegation from a company called Stallergenes in France, and they're a company that makes allergen immunotherapy, and they, made 4 visits from France with 3 of their team, and they came and we talked, and they went back again, and they came back. We talked some more. And eventually we actually undertook a research project. And what they wanted to do was they really wanted to test what I had done in my research lab and to validate that, to see whether they could replicate what I had done in their commercial facilities. Again, that was a really insightful and productive collaborative research with industry that went really well. I also then got a collaboration and industry engagement fund grant from UQ, and that's when I started working with some colleagues at agriculture who knew all about some of the crop species in the temperate grasses, and we used a new methodology to derive all the allergen components of Johnson grass. So that patent was filed. I then got a grant, just as I was leaving UQ, from the National Foundation of Medical Research Innovation Fund, and they are, I really like working with this organisation. I was saying to Ash, our IBI business manager, that it's not about the grant that they gave me, but it's about the doors that they opened for me. It's about the coaching that they provided for me. It's about those connections that they've facilitated. And it's about the collaboration and outsourcing of some of the work that would have taken me a long time to do in my own lab that I didn't have experience with, that I contracted out to Monash Antibody Technology Facilities. So again, we're just sort of wrapping that up, and it's gone reasonably well. Last year, I put an application into the Johnson & Johnson Advanced Queensland Quickfire Challenge, and I was one of the finalists. And I think that again was a really wonderful experience, because it provided business case training and one-on-one mentoring with one of their people in California who's working in the business development. It really helped me sort of refine strategy, think about what was really practical around my innovations and what I could do and how I might be able to move that forward. And this year I'm sponsored to do the Australian Institute of Company Directors course. So that's sort of like some of the steps I've taken in my engagement with industry. So then I think I was reflecting on, well, what does it mean? You know, how do you have to change your mindset from being a pure academic? And I've got 4 Cat 1 grants that I need to fulfil and deliver on, and I have to write my papers and I have to run my team, like we all do. But really the mindset for thinking about taking the patents, so now there's I think 4 patent applications, one of which is granted. How do I want to move those from my research lab? I really want to see them to be commercialised and used by patients in the clinic. I think you have to start thinking, well, what research do I need to do to exemplify the use of that patented material? What quality control systems do I need to put into place and utilise and access if I don't have them in my own lab? I've really for a long time now been having that conversation, that engagement in lots of different ways with industry. And really looking at the end user focus. Who are the patients that are going to use that? What do they want to do? Do they want to go to their doctor every month and get an injection? Or do they want a new kind of technology, a new delivery system that's going to be much easier for them? And from the Australian context, how important is that? Especially when we've got a lot of patients who are very allergic to the grasses who live in the rural regions and they don't have access to allergy specialists. So just thinking about what does the patient want? What does the patient need? Have those conversations with my clinical partners. Know what it is that how they want to treat and manage their patients. So really understand so that what we're developing and what we're trying to work towards is practical, it's market driven and it's marketable. And related to that is, does it have a real world pull? And I guess for me, I've had a lot of engagement with a lot of different global partners in diagnostics and in therapeutics, but I think I'm still sort of haven't jumped right on in. I don't have that license yet, and maybe the vehicle to do that, some of it's through licensing possibly for the diagnostic, but perhaps I need to take my courage up and follow what Mark's done and think about a clever way to actually move this forward and say, well, I don't have this, I haven't done that, but how can I get the money to do that? And is it going to come from government grants? Maybe not. Yeah, so I don't focus so much now on the academic outputs, but and sometimes, like the first discovery, and the first grant I got was 2005, but the publication didn't come out. The first one we put out was 2008, the next one was 2012. You know, that's a long time. You have to hold back some things. You can't publish everything straight away, so you have to think, what impact does that have on your career progression? And, you know, Kathy will know, it's personally cost me an awful lot to do that. You know, I went through a point where I had a 10% job because people thought, oh, you haven't really done much. You know, we're not going to back you. But I was like, okay, I've got a 10% job, but I've got a couple of grants and I've got people who can work with me, and I'm not going to let this die. I'm going to move this forward. And so I guess I'm pulling myself out of that hole and saying, yeah, we're going forward with this. This is too important to let drop, you know. So that's your mindset. You also have to do different activities. You spend a lot of time. Mark will attest to this. He will know. You know, I have to start thinking, and I guess my husband's in biotech, my mother was too, and my father was in banking. So I guess maybe I absorbed some thinking processes. But, you know, I started to do market size analysis. You know, who's going to use it, how much it's going to cost, how many people here, how many in the US, what's going to be the return on investment. You know, if it costs me this much to make and this much I'm going to sell it for, who's going to invest? That kind of thinking. You know, I've had to do a lot of commercial development planning and helping draft CDAs and requests for quotes, and done a lot of consultations, a lot of presentations with industry, a lot of pitching business case to their boards and so forth. Industry's been to see me, I've been to see industry, and it's great having your staff and students placed in industry and working in industry labs. We all learn so much around the different ways of thinking, the different processes of handling samples, the different, you know, approach. It's really quite enlightening. And this year I've been asked to be part of a scientific advisory board from a US spin-off company who are in this space. Yeah, so you start using your time in different ways. And as Mark said, you know, you've just got to do it, and you've still got your day job, but you've just got to do this too. So I thought I'll take the luxury of a little bit of context for you. I work on allergies. This is a really big problem. A lot of you might have heard about the thunderstorm asthma event that happened last year in Melbourne, whereas a lot of people have in the past just dismissed pollen allergy as causing hay fever, and we'll just forget about that. You know, we're not going to invest in that. But in fact, you know, 98 to 100% of the people who had that thunderstorm asthma episode were all allergic to grass pollen, and only 50% of them had diagnosed asthma ever before. It was a disease and underlying and driven by pollen allergy, by hay fever. And, you know, 10% of those people were severely affected, and some of those people could be treated, they could be made better, they could be protected from those kinds of episodes. And we need a new way of doing it. People don't want to have needles all the time. There is technology. I don't want to develop new technology and delivery methods. I think pharma and biotech are doing that really well. I want to get the right molecules to the right people on the right platform. And now there are, you know, good, safe and easy to use delivery systems for allergy vaccines via tablets that quickly dissolve under the tongue. But they don't cover off on subtropical species that, you know, now I've got 10 years worth of research that's been validated externally to show that the existing products don't cover and are not likely to be fully effective for people who are allergic to use subtropical grasses. So I've only put in this up because I want to, you know, share with you the journey. The first patent was filed in 2007 and approved in 2014. But I've had to be a little bit clever because I've had to find you know, some of the companies are like, well, we don't actually need to use her molecule, we'll just move around her IP. So I thought, well, okay, I need to, you know, mitigate against that strategy. So we also put in a patent application to protect use and standardisation of the content. So that means that whether they use my molecule or not, or whether they just use the content of my molecule in another product, they're going to have to measure it and they're going to have to use my IP. And now we've covered off the entire family of subtropical Panicordiae grasses with these two patent areas. So we take a pollen source. You know, I use a three-prong approach of proteomics, transcriptomics and allergomics to drill down and identify within all of the proteins that the source makes which ones are the allergens, which ones do we need to mitigate against. And they can be used in two ways. They can be used for the diagnostics and the same molecules can be used for the treatment. So it kind of makes sense. There's two product lines that can come out of this. But it's not easy, and this is my last slide that I want to really talk about, is it's not, what are the motivators to, drive people into this space of working more closely with industry, and what are some of the barriers and challenges that you need to overcome? So really, it's a good opportunity because you get access to learning new skills and capabilities. When you work with industry, you can outsource key tasks that they can do better than you can, and that makes sense. The whole, putting yourself in that place allows you to experience and learn while you're doing that. So it's a really good opportunity for me and for my whole team. And we get exposure to these different mindsets. I mean, the language and the way Mark thinks and talks is just really quite different than a typical academic, right? But you've got 25 years of thinking like that. I like to be part of these conversations. I like to think and hear how Mark thinks. And we've had lots of one-on-one conversations over the last couple of years, and they've just, moved me forward step by step. So I think being part of that conversation is really part of that learning and enhancing our culture here in Queensland, where we can increase the capacity and the familiarity of all the people in the room with starting to engage like that. Now, we might not all start spin-off companies. We might not all patent our ideas. But what if, some of them did get through and did make a difference to our patient community here in Queensland and get spun off and sent out to the world? That'd be great. Partnership, I think, is a fantastic way for early stage advancement from discovery to commercial translation. And doing this, I think, provides you with a point of difference from those that are pure academics. So I think that's useful to put on your CV, it's useful to put on your grant applications, it's useful when you want to talk about the impact of what you're doing and the relevance, and that's important for most grant panels these days. They want to see that what you're doing is going to make a difference in the real world, and they're starting to look for a closer time frame and relevance. But the challenges are, it takes a lot of stages to get to success, and you don't necessarily, there's not KPIs around measuring that. It takes time to nurture and those rapports with industry and manage them well. Sometimes people will have the mindset of, I just need to get the money and then I can go and do what I want. But, that's going to kill a relationship. What you need to do is nurture that. It's a two-way engagement and it should be mutually beneficial. And, as academics that had time for, you have to carve aside the time to do that and do it nicely, So for the inventor themselves, it's high risk. You're putting this time, you're doing things that aren't traditionally academic, but there's also, I think, in our current culture, a low incentive of return to the investor or to the inventor. And that's another topic that we can probably talk about. And the universities don't get a lot for the money you bring in from commercial grants because the secondary gains are much lower than the Cap1 funding. So that's not, that's not a pull for the universities to help you in this space. But they like it because they want to see that their work is being translated. And I find often that the grant schemes that are supporting commercial interactions are good, and it's great that they're there, but often it's difficult to fit the criteria or to find the right partner at the right time for a particular grant. So again, I think that there are aspects where we're doing a lot and there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of new grant schemes, but they're not all accessible for biotech. Some of them are better suited for other high-tech, faster-moving things. So collaboration is important. I think we've covered that. Exchange of knowledge, fast-tracking development, outsourcing. And it gives you enablers of quality systems, external validation, your connections, your placement, your coaching, refining strategy. So my last one. There are a lot of things you can do. You can use proof of concept grants and development grants, contracted research projects, partnering with industry. But to take that IP the next step, I guess this is where I'm sort of at, you know, I can see a pathway via licensing for the diagnostic but not for the therapeutic. And this is sitting there, and do I want to leave that little pathway? I came through the forest, this was my holiday in January, and go down, you know, over the cliff into that surf and get tossed around. That's what I probably need to go and do to make it happen. And these are the people who have supported me on the way. So there we go. Thanks.